Present. Sophia's bedroom. Sophia's fingers flew across the keyboard with surgical precision. Lines of green code cascaded down the black screen, reflecting in her brown eyes. Eyes that now glimmered with something that hadn't been there during breakfast. Purpose. The phantom folder opened, revealing dozens of subfolders, each representing a job she had completed over the last 10 years. Hacked banks, only the corrupt ones. She had principles. Human trafficking networks dismantled. Corrupt politicians exposed. And millions of dollars in cryptocurrency hidden in digital wallets the FBI had never been able to trace. Sophia Chen wasn't just a hacker. She was the hacker. The legend. The digital ghost governments offered $50 million for information about her identity. And she had just married a man who didn't even bother to ask how she liked her coffee. Idiot, she muttered to herself, though she wasn't sure if she meant Alexander or herself for agreeing to this marriage. Her phone buzzed. An encrypted message from one of her market underworld contacts. Cobra King. Phantom, you still alive? 2 weeks with no signal. Client offering $10 million for a job. Interested? Sophia hesitated. She had stopped taking jobs 3 weeks ago when her father's relapse pushed them into this desperate situation. But $10 million? No. She didn't need it anymore. The deal with the Blackwoods included $2 million upfront for her father's treatment, plus another $1 million per year during the marriage. Dirty money of a different kind, but at least it was legal. Phantom. Temporarily retired. Thanks for the offer. She closed the laptop, but not before checking one last thing. Her secret Cayman bank account. $3.2 billion. She had enough money to treat her father 10 times over. She could have solved everything by herself. But when the doctor said her father had only 3 months left without the experimental treatment, and that the waiting list was 2 years unless you had the right connections, she panicked. And when Alexander Blackwood personally showed up at the hospital, something about corporate social responsibility and media optics, and his assistant mentioned that the family was looking for a discreet bride for Alexander to improve his public image, Sophia's father, the proudest man she knew, held her hand and whispered, "Sophia, my daughter, if this can give you a better life." He didn't know about her money. No one did. And she couldn't tell him. Revealing the source of the money would mean admitting who she was. So she accepted a deal with the devil. Flashback, 2 weeks ago. The law firm office was all dark mahogany and leather-bound books. Sophia sat on one side of the desk, Alexander on the other. Between them, 15 pages of a prenuptial agreement. "Ms. Chen," the attorney began. "The terms are simple. A marriage of at least 5 years. No public scandals, no lovers, public appearances as needed. In exchange, $2 million immediately for your father's medical expenses, $1 million per year, and in the case of divorce after the 5 years, an additional $10 million. And if he wants a divorce before that?" Sophia asked calmly. Alexander spoke for the first time, his voice like ice. "I won't. I need stability for 5 years to finalize a corporate merger. After that, you'll be free." Sophia repeated, the word bitter on her tongue. "As if I were a prisoner." "You're free to decline," Alexander said, finally looking at her. His blue eyes were cold, calculating. "But I doubt you'll find $2 million anywhere else before your father, well." He left the sentence unfinished, but the cruelty was unmistakable. Sophia signed the document without another word. Alexander barely glanced at her as he signed his own name with his Mont Blanc pen. "Pleasure doing business with you, Ms. Chen." Not future wife, not Sophia, just Ms. Chen. Present. Blackwood Mansion dining room. Sophia came back downstairs 2 hours later after pulling herself together. She needed to explore the house to understand where she was living. Mrs. Morrison found her in the hallway. "Mrs. Blackwood? Can I help you with anything?" "Mrs. Blackwood." The name felt fake. "I'm just familiarizing myself with the house," Sophia replied. "Of course, let me show you." Mrs. Morrison stopped abruptly, looking over Sophia's shoulder. Isabella was descending the staircase gracefully, now wearing a pale yellow summer dress that made her look like a ray of sunshine. "Sophia, I was looking for you," Isabella chimed. "I thought we could have lunch together, get to know each other better." "The last thing I want," Sophia thought. But she smiled politely. "How kind. 5-star restaurant, 2 hours later, Isabella chose the most expensive restaurant in the city. My treat, she insisted as soon as they sat down. The meal was torture disguised as civility. So, Isabella began, delicately cutting her salad. Tell me about yourself, Sophia. Where are you from? What did you do before? Well, before marrying Alexander? I grew up in the east side of the city, Sophia answered honestly. No point lying about something so easily verified. I worked in IT. Right, Isabella repeated, as if it were the most adorable thing. Like, tech support? Something like that. Fascinating. Her tone made it clear it was anything but fascinating. And your family? Alexander mentioned something about your father being ill. The mention of her father made Sophia stiffen. He's in treatment. He's going to be fine. Of course. Isabella sipped her white wine. It's so generous of the Blackwood family to cover his expenses. Alexander has such a kind heart, always taking care of people. Not me, Sophia thought bitterly. As if reading her thoughts, Isabella continued. A lot of people don't understand Alexander. He seems cold, but that's only because he loves so deeply that he's afraid of being hurt again. Again? Sophia asked before she could stop herself. Isabella leaned forward, conspiratorial. When we reunited 5 years ago, after the fire, he cried. Can you imagine? Alexander Blackwood, the most powerful man in the city, crying in my arms. He said he thought he'd never find me. Each word was a needle. Isabella knew exactly what she was doing. But then, Isabella sighed, our parents didn't approve. We're distant cousins, but still. And Alexander needed a marriage that benefited the business. She looked at Sophia with false pity. That's when you came along. Perfect timing. Sophia deliberately set her fork down. If she held it 1 second longer, she might do something she'd regret. Isabella, she said calmly, I appreciate your clarification, but I entered this marriage knowing exactly what it is. A business arrangement. I don't need your pity or your explanations. For a second, Isabella's mask slipped. A flash of pure rage crossed her face before she recomposed herself. Of course, she said coolly. I only wanted to be honest. Honest, Sophia repeated. Interesting choice of word. The rest of lunch passed in frozen silence. Blackwood Mansion, afternoon. Sophia returned to find the house empty. Mrs. Morrison informed her that Alexander had called. He would be working until at least midnight. First night as a married woman, and he won't even come home, Sophia thought. She went upstairs to her room, locked the door, and did something she hadn't planned to do. She began investigating Isabella Harrington. It took 15 minutes to hack into Isabella's personal laptop. The woman used the password, Alexander my love 123. Pathetic and revealing. What Sophia found made her blood run cold. Emails. Hundreds of them. Between Isabella and someone referred to only as D. Isabella. The wedding happened. The idiot actually signed. D. Excellent. Phase 1 complete. Now we need to ensure she's eliminated within a year. Isabella. Eliminated? You mean divorced? D. I meant what I said. A widow is easier to control than an ex-wife, especially when Alexander inherits full control of the company 1 year after the marriage, as per his father's will. Isabella. You're talking about... D. I'm talking about making it look like an accident. No one will suspect a thing. Poor girl couldn't handle the pressure of marrying into such an important family. Suicide. Or maybe a car accident. I'm still deciding. Isabella. And Alexander? D. Alexander will find comfort in your arms, as he always does. And when he discovers that you are the true heir his father wanted him to find, we will discover documents proving it. He will marry you. And we will have full control of the Blackwood $15 billion fortune. Isabella. Genius. I can't wait to see her face when... Sophia stopped reading, nausea rising in her throat. They were planning to kill her. And Alexander knew nothing. Or did he? Flashback, 10 years ago. Sophia was 15, sitting in a cheap internet cafe, learning code from YouTube videos. Her father had lost his job. Their landlord was threatening eviction. They had $47 in the bank. There has to be a way, Sophia murmured, her fingers flying across the keyboard. That was when she discovered the forums. Black market hackers offering thousands of dollars for simple jobs. Hacking an email. Recovering deleted data. Her first job paid $500. It took her 20 minutes. She deposited the money anonymously into her father's account. When he asked where it came from, she lied, "I won a scholarship." At 17, she was making $50,000 per job. At 20, she was Phantom, the legend no one could catch. At 25, she was a billionaire. But she still lived in a one-bedroom apartment with her father, because spending the money would mean explaining where it came from. And now, at 28, she was trapped in a fake marriage with her murder being planned by a psychopathic woman pretending to be a delicate princess. Present, Sophia's bedroom, midnight. Sophia was lying awake when she heard the front door open. Heavy footsteps climbed the stairs. She expected Alexander to walk past her room on his way to his own. But the steps stopped right outside her door. She held her breath. A soft knock. "Sophia?" Alexander's voice uncertain. "Are you awake?" She stayed silent for a moment, then got up and opened the door. Alexander was still in his suit, tie loosened, eyes tired. He smelled like whiskey. "You're drunk," she said. "A little," he admitted. Then he really looked at her for the first time since the wedding. "You're in pajamas." Sophia wore a simple cotton nightgown, her hair falling in natural waves. No makeup, just her. For a moment, something flickered in Alexander's eyes. Confusion? Recognition? But then he shook his head as if pushing a thought away. "I just wanted to check if you have everything you need." "I do." Awkward silence. "Right. Well, good night then." He turned to leave, but Sophia said, "Alexander?" He stopped, glancing over his shoulder. "Why did you do this? Why marry me if you hate me so much?" The question caught him off guard. For a long moment, he just looked at her. "I don't hate you," he said finally, voice low. "I don't know you, and that's the problem. You're a stranger. And I already gave my heart to—" He stopped. "To Isabella." Sophia finished for him. "To the girl who saved my life 20 years ago." Alexander corrected. "Isabella is that girl." Sophia felt the words forming on her tongue. "No, she isn't. I am." But something stopped her. Maybe pride, maybe fear, or maybe the certainty that he would never believe her. "I understand," she said instead. "Good night, Alexander." She closed the door gently. On the other side, Alexander stood still for a long moment, hand lifted as if he were going to knock again. But then he lowered it. As he walked toward his room, something bothered him. The way Sophia had stood in the doorway, the light behind her illuminating her dark hair. For just a second, she had looked like— No, impossible. He pushed the thought aside and went to bed alone, as always. Sophia's bedroom, 3 a.m. Sophia couldn't sleep. The messages she had discovered about her planned murder replayed in her mind. She opened her laptop again and began doing what she did best, gathering information. It took 3 hours, but she finally discovered who Dee was. Damian Cross, a Blackwood corporate rival. The man had lost an $800 million contract to Alexander last year and gone bankrupt. He was using Isabella, promising her marriage to Alexander and half of the Blackwood fortune if she helped him destroy the family from the inside. And Isabella, blinded by her obsession with Alexander and her greed, had agreed. Sophia copied every email, every text message, every bank transfer. Enough evidence to imprison them both for conspiracy to commit murder and fraud. But she didn't send it to the police. Not yet. Because Sophia Chen, Phantom, had a better plan. If Isabella and Damian wanted to play dirty, she would show them what a real player could do. And maybe, she would finally show Alexander Blackwood who actually saved his life all those years ago. Not with words he wouldn't believe, but with actions he couldn't deny. Next morning, breakfast. Sophia came down to breakfast at exactly 7. Alexander was already there, reading the Wall Street Journal, a cup of coffee beside him. She poured her own coffee and sat silently across the table. For 5 minutes, neither spoke. Then Alexander lowered the newspaper. "About last night?" "Forget it," Sophia interrupted. "You were drunk. It meant nothing." She expected to see relief in his expression. Instead, she saw something that looked like disappointment. But before he could reply, Isabella floated into the room. "Good morning, family," she sang, as if she lived there. She went straight to Alexander, leaned down and kissed him. Not on the cheek, on the corner of his mouth. Intimate. Possessive. Alexander didn't pull away. Sophia felt something break inside her. Not her heart. She wasn't foolish enough to give it to this man. But her pride. Her dignity. She stood calmly and placed her cup in the sink. I have an appointment. Excuse me. Appointment? Isabella asked sweetly, venom coated in sugar. What could a simple IT girl possibly have to do? Sophia turned slowly, a cold smile on her lips. Actually, I have an interview. For the position of cybersecurity director at Tech Corp. Isabella laughed. Tech Corp? They would never hire someone without a postgraduate degree from MIT in computer science? Sophia finished. Yes, I have one. Graduated at 22, summa cum laude. The silence in the room was deafening. Alexander lowered the newspaper completely, something new in his eyes. Surprise. You studied at MIT? He asked. Full scholarship, Sophia replied. But I'm sure your private investigator included that in the report on me before you proposed this marriage. Color rose up Alexander's neck. He had the decency to look ashamed. I didn't read the full report. Of course you didn't, Sophia said softly. Why would you care? She left before he could answer. At the door, she heard Isabella whisper to Alexander, MIT, she's obviously lying, trying to impress you. Bella, Alexander said, and his voice was strange. Could you give me a minute? Sophia smiled to herself as she walked up the stairs. Let him doubt, she thought. Let them both doubt. When Phantom showed her real face, neither of them would be prepared.